To the interview on France 24. We're in Nouakchott at the summit of the African Union, and our guest is the President of Mali, Ibrahim Boubacar Keita. Mr. President, thank you.
You're most welcome.
Mr. President, let's start with the recent tragic event in Mali. There were terrorist attacks against the headquarters of the G5 Sahel force in Sévaré, another terrorist attack in Gao. What's your reaction?
Well, unfortunately, this seems to be our cruel destiny. There's nothing unusual about this. This is a phenomenon that has established itself, which seems to be here to stay for an indefinite time span. I've just been in Sévaré. I was unable to come to Nouakchott to meet my brothers, friends, and colleagues from the Sahel G5 without telling them the reality, the absolute horror of Sévaré, this massive crater, the headquarters of the G5 Sahel, which was completely destroyed.
It's a terrible symbol.
Well, we cannot say that this won't happen or can't happen, but the situation is such that you cannot completely forestall a terrorist attack. Never. And everybody knows that, including countries which are better equipped, better protected.
We have the feeling that there's an increase in the recent time. We know it in the north, we know it now Alice in the center. When we look at Mali, we have the feeling that the situation of the security is decaying.
Well, is this really specific to Mali? When you look at the Sahel, it's happening outside Mali and elsewhere around the world. This is not a phenomenon that is simply in Mali. Perhaps it's a swan song.
Do you think that the jihadist forces are retreating?
Well, in Mali, what we can say for sure is that our armed forces are moving ahead again. And what we're hearing now is that they show little concern for military law. That's not true. All armies around the world have faced this challenge. Counterterrorism is asymmetrical warfare. There is no set rule, and yet we have a very strict concern, which is compliance, respect for human rights.
There were blunders.
Respect for everybody's rights, including those suspected of terrorism, until this has been established by a court of law. So we firmly condemn anything that is illegal.
Army blunders were denounced by the United Nations. Those responsible will be punished.
I'm not talking about blunders. What I'm saying is that there are proven cases of failure to respect human rights. Then we establish that fact, and it'll be dealt with through legal channels in order for all legal channels to be exploited, and we'll make sure that due diligence is exercised.
The elections are set for July 29th. Are threatened. Are they threatened by the security situation? Will they be held in due time? Or if violence increases, can we imagine that the terrorist groups will want to strike the minds? Will you decide to postpone the elections?
Well, of course, some people would like to see that happening, but in Africa, we have experience of this. Each time the electoral rules are moved in Africa, there's a blunder. We are no longer complying with the law, and we want to avoid that at all costs. However, we have ensured that the process goes ahead in Mali. It's very clear. We're not going to let Mali go to the dogs. We're going to ensure that authority is respected, and we have an inclusive process, a transparent process, and therefore there's no reason.
Including security.
We know that in the center of Mali we have problems. Now, you've understood that trying to whitewash terrorism, as it were. What we're going to try and make people believe is that there's some kind of struggle against a specific ethnic group, and the ethnic group to which that man belongs, who is seeking to restore the former theocratic power of Massina through a liberation front for Massina. And And therefore, what is being implied is that if he's attacked, all his ethnic group is being attacked. We're all Malians. And people are saying that this is being done by the Malian armed forces. This is an insult to us. We cannot be put in this situation.
Let's get to an issue that has been raised here. During the summit, there were some meetings, the G5 Sahel. We talked about the headquarters that has been attacked, that raises some issues of security. There's also the issue of the implementation, which is slow, and of the financing, which is secured for the first year, not for the next years, because the UN doesn't want to.
Now, this is an excellent question. The implementation is slow. Well, this is a very sad story. It's very sad to see that 5 states, acting in good faith, engaged in a struggle which is in universal interest in the Sahel, because we are the barrier. These people come from outside, and their plan, which has been established elsewhere, which is intended to establish global hegemony, where are they going? If the barrier yields in the Sahel, it'll move through to the Mediterranean and you will be affected. So it's not just a mission for us. And in order to implement this, the fact that we are having to hold out the begging bowl to beg for 423 million euros, while there is a daily bombing in some regions which costs over $1 billion, that makes no sense at all. It is a scandal. So you can see just how difficult it is.
So who's against? Because the community says we support, the European Union supports, France supports.
Well, France supports us. I commend the efforts of President Macron. As soon as he came to power, when he came to Gao to visit the Barkhane force, we went to meet him, of course, on our territory. And since then, he has committed to supporting the G5 Sahel, to advocacy on the relevance of the G5 Sahel. Now, he's doing his best, but he can't do everything. When we promise, when the other countries, other partners commit, well, at present, we're trying to wind up our budget, but what do we actually have? We have far less.
What, much less? You know how much there is in there?
Well, I don't have the exact figure. And this is what is so damaging to the speedy implementation of the Sahel G5. I inaugurated the HQ, and this was all done through Mali, and all the financial commitments arising from this since then are from Mali. Now, of course, with our brothers, we have handled the funding, we've pooled the resources. But the effort being made by the G5 Sahel and the efforts that the French partners are making, and there were 2 major contributors, the European Union, Saudi Arabia, and the United Arab Emirates, and Turkey has also been involved. All of this is still well short of our requirements, which are very significant. And when you send troops out on the ground, when you have men on the ground 24 hours a day who are seeking to maintain operations, logistics, and you have an effort that also requires the establishment of military means, this is not easy.
Do you condemn the obstruction of the United States at the Security Council? You would like the UN to finance the G5 Sahel. The United States don't want to. Is this an outrage?
Well, you know, I'm a former pupil of Jean-Baptiste Durossel, and I'm not a beginner in diplomacy. I don't want to offend anybody, and we're surprised, quite simply. We're trying to make our American partners understand that it's impossible to successfully wage war against terrorism unless we have the resources. And if the mandate, which has been given to the MINUSMA, the stabilization mobilization and peacekeeping force is not reviewed and its status is not reviewed, how can you give a peacekeeping mandate in a region which is at war? How can you expect people who come to do peacekeeping tasks when they are constantly being harassed by improvised explosive devices, the IEDs, when they are constantly being attacked? Well, how can they do their job? They don't have any armored vehicles to protect them. We need protection for them. And for months and months, this has been refused.
You're talking to a brick wall.
We have the understanding from Antonio Gutierrez, but basically we're not having proper cooperation from the Americans. We hope that they're going to move on this. They're not rejecting our efforts. They're prepared to look at things in a bilateral approach, but this is the negation of the G5 Sahel. And this is separating us. We are united in this struggle, and adopting a bilateral approach means separating us.
Last question, Mr. President. The election, 29 July, you're a candidate to your succession. You're not the only one in the starting blocks. I imagine you're confident that you will win, largely, widely. Do you think it's going to be more difficult than you would think?
I'm confident. I recall that in 2013, when I stood, I did not have the support of such a powerful party as the Edema party, which was standing, and that's not the case this time around. I also know that over the past 5 years, everything has not been easy, but I have a track record.
Challenged.
Well, you can always be challenged. Everybody is challenged, but I think that the Malian people know full well what has happened, and they're not constantly bashing the efforts. And those who are doing this should give it some proper thought.
So 29th evening, you'll be re-elected?
The Malian people will decide on the 29th in the evening. I'm a Democrat.
Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mark.
Thank you, Mr. President, for answering our questions on France 24. Thanks for watching this interview from Nouakchott, Mauritania.